Hey y'all, Cory here from Ensemble, Texas. And in this video, I want to introduce you to the Texas native shrub, the Flame Acanthus or Hummingbird Bush. The Flame Acanthus is a deciduous Texas native shrub best known for its red tubular flowers that are beloved by hummingbirds. This might be why it's also known as the Hummingbird Bush. But the Flame Acanthus naturally grows on rocky slopes of Texas, and in the proper conditions, it can spread quite easily. I've had Flame Acanthus in my landscape for over 3 years now, and it's a really excellent low maintenance plant that thrives in hot, dry, direct sunlight. It seems like the more sun, the more heat you give it, the more profuse blooms you get. Personally, I think if you can grow it, you skip the hummingbird feeder and just put one of these in the ground. Other common names include the Hummingbird Bush, which we've already mentioned, Wrightii, the Cohila honeysuckle, and the Flame Acanthus typically grows to a height of about 3 to 5 feet tall. As for soils, the Flame Acanthus likes rich soils, but can grow in heavy clay soils, shallow, rocky soil types as well. Preferably the soil is well drained, with some sand or some limestone. As for water, this is an extremely low water use plant, very drought tolerant once established. This planting here is probably on maybe the driest part or section of our property, and it's maybe doing the best of any of the plantings that we have. As for light, loves full sun. I think the more sun you can give it, the better. And it's actually a part of the Acanthus family. So where is the Flame Acanthus native? Well, the Flame Acanthus is native to the west and south central Texas. It's much more popular in landscapes than it is in natural areas, although you will find it along arroyos, canyons, even in dry stream beds of West Texas at 3,000 to 5,000 feet. It grows in the rocky banks and floodplains of the Edwards Plateau. They're along roadsides, streams, and open woodlands of the Trans-Pecos and northern Mexico. So, some reasons as to why you might want to grow the Flame Acanthus in your Texas native landscape and why I love it in mine. First, for you and your landscape, I love the absolute bright, showy flowers of the Flame Acanthus, which can come in a vibrant kind of coral-like color, reddish and orange. They bring a really beautiful pop of color to your garden when things really start to heat up in Texas. And then along those lines too, the flowers attract hummingbirds and butterflies. It's really not long after our Flame Acanthus starts to bloom that we start to see hummingbirds. As well, the Flame Acanthus loves heat and direct sun. And in Texas, I think you really relish finding your plants that not only survive in the heat and really hot, direct sun, but absolutely love it. And I would think that Flame Acanthus is one of those. It's our best blooming plant in one of the hottest, driest conditions that we have on our property here. And then as well, it spreads and transplants easily. So depending on what kind of landscaper or gardener you are, this might be a con. If you want a plant that is a bit more controlled, but we have a lot of space to fill here on our property, and I absolutely love the Flame Acanthus. And so, we've purchased 4 Flame Acanthus plants 2 to 3 years ago, a combination of that, but there's really no reason to buy another one. We just have to have a little patience. They shoot their seeds out rather prolifically. So in spring, when we find new plants, we can decide to transplant them to another portion of our property or give them away to friends. Or if we really don't want it there, have nothing to do with it, we can just cut it down. It's also a super low water use plant. Once established, this plant requires no supplemental water. And finally, it's low maintenance. So while the Flame Acanthus can be cut back to promote more compact growth, it doesn't need to be. So I currently prefer the Flame Acanthus plant most that we didn't cut back in winter. That's this one here. We have a couple others on our property that we did cut to make more compact, and I would say still this one is kind of bushing out the most, but maybe over time we might trim it. And last detail it is deer resistant. So deer aren't an issue for us on our property. However, for those who have the issue, Flame Acanthus is apparently highly deer resistant, so worth considering. And then benefits for wildlife. Of course, again, it's a nectar source for pollinators. Hummingbirds love the plant's tubular flowers, the ruby-throated hummingbird in particular, and having the Flame Acanthus around means you get to enjoy some of that wildlife. It's a host plant as well for the crescent butterfly, the Texas crescent butterfly. As for planting and care, here's a couple of my tips for maybe where to plant the Flame Acanthus and how to care for it. Starting with location, full sunlight. You know, I think you gotta plant your Flame Acanthus in full sun. It will survive in other conditions, but I think where it best thrives, especially in year 2 and 3, is in full sun. You can plant it under light shade, but it will produce fewer flowers. And from my experience, the most bushy, most profusely blooming Flame Acanthus that I've seen either here or out in various spaces of the San Antonio area are really in hot, direct sun. Next, I'd consider drier conditions. So Flame Acanthus prefers drier conditions, you know, thinking about its native range, and I've planted it accordingly, hottest, driest areas of our property. And then I'd think about where you don't mind or maybe want some spread. So the Flame Acanthus will spread easily. So if you're concerned about it spreading, don't plant it in an area where it needs to respect some boundaries. And then finally, it can be planted in pots. So there's some versatility there. According to Native Texas Plants Landscaping region by region, Flame Acanthus is a Texas native plant that can do quite well in a pot. You know, I can't speak from a direct experience here, but I thought this was an interesting note to mention, but I do very much so enjoy it in the ground. So it does feel worth mentioning if you want that kind of adaptability and versatility. This might be because it can do quite well in dry conditions, and typically potted plantings are gonna dry out much faster. As for the care and maintenance side of things, there is optional annual pruning. You can prune back your Flame Acanthus in winter to promote more compact growth. This isn't necessary. However, if you'd like to keep the plant a little smaller and need it to remain in a tighter space, you might consider it. As for transplanting as well, you know, I enjoy that the Flame Acanthus readily spreads on its own. You know, not everyone does. But this will be your biggest point of maintenance with the Flame Acanthus. So if you see, you know, new sprouts, new plants growing up, you know, consider transplanting them, planting it in an area where you don't mind it spreading and starting a family of its own, you know, and you got to keep on top of the new plants. That might be an issue for you or not. You know, you can dig them up, transplant those, move those to other places on your property. We dig them up to transplant them or give them away to friends. As for companion plants, the Flame Acanthus can grow alongside other native plants from South Central Texas. These are some plant species for you to consider. Perhaps the Anisacanthus orchid tree, Turk's cap, Texas lantana, agarita, the rock rose, pavonia, or Texas sage. The blooms on those plants really complement nicely with this color. We've planted our Flame Acanthus with frog fruit, copper canyon daisy, and yaupon holly. And then here, kind of just as a solo planting on the edge of our property by our driveway, and it's done quite well, but we will add some things to it over time. Season to season, what to expect? Well, you know, the Flame Acanthus typically blooms from June to September. Throughout the year though, here's what you can keep in mind. In spring, the Flame Acanthus leaves start to arrive and new growth comes as the plant starts to bush out. It'll just be kind of a green, lighter green bush. Depending on the location of the planting, the blooming will start during late spring. The hotter the area, the sooner that the blooming will begin to start, at least in my experience of our plants on our property. Then in summer, these plants steadily flower until mid to late summer after rain. We're here in late June, just early summer, and have had some good rain recently, so it's really just busting out. The blooms do correspond to the advent of hot weather. In fall, the flowers start to fade a bit, and you'll be left with a bushy green shrub. And then winter, the plant will lose all its leaves come first frost and look a bit twiggy. This might be reason to cut it back, but I usually recommend folks don't prune their plants until after the danger of frost has passed, because that extra space in the plant is one, habitat for different insect species, but two, can also protect the plant from further frost damage. Although many very hardy Texas native species should be fine, It is kind of an awkward stage. It's not nice to have a twiggy plant for that long, but that is my recommendation there and what we do at our house here in San Antonio. As for propagation, here's how to grow more Flame Acanthus from your current plants. Flame Acanthus does produce plenty of seeds naturally, and so it wouldn't be my preferred method. It seems more work than it's worth. You can sow seeds directly into the soil. Again, since the seeds capsules split and shoot out, I think you're gonna have no problem of finding new plants that were sown from seed around your mother plant. But to grow more Flame Acanthus from cuttings anyways, you can propagate Flame Acanthus quite easy from softwood cuttings. It's recommended to cut them during the summer or fall before the wood has hardened out, the new growth. So cut a 4 to 6 inch section below a node. You can remove the leaves from the bottom half of that. Afterward, dip the cuttings in some rooting hormone and then plant them just about 3 inches apart. Give supplemental water and the Flame Acanthus cuttings can root within 3 weeks. And of course, then transplanting again, which we've mentioned before, you want to transplant your Flame Acanthus in fall or as early in spring as possible, and then cut back by 1/3. And make sure to give extra water during its first year to establish, especially if you did a transplanting during spring when things start to heat up. But before we wrap up, let's go and take a look at some of the other plantings in my property so you can get a sense for the difference of the shape and companions that we've added for our Flame Acanthus plants throughout our yard. So checking out a couple other Flame Acanthus plantings here. We have this one at the top of a rainwater harvesting berm. This one was pruned. As well notable, we've transplanted this Flame Acanthus, 3 or 4 times. We had been shaping these rainwater harvesting berms and just didn't know the right place to put it just yet. And so this poor guy had been moved maybe 3 or 4 times, but nonetheless, super, super resilient. We were moving it during late fall and winter, but just so you know, some of these plants, like this Flame Acanthus here, can take quite a beating. But this Flame Acanthus is at the upper portion of this rainwater harvesting berm with frog fruit covering. You can see this frog fruit pretty dang active with different pollinators, butterflies, little bees and wasps. We do have a Copper Canyon daisy here, which, the frog fruit might be taking over. That's more of a commentary on the frog fruit than it is the Flame Acanthus. But there, right next to it, we do have a Yelpin holly. Shaping for this berm, we might keep this Flame Acanthus rather compact. But right next to it, we do have another complementary set of plantings of Flame Acanthus here. They're a little on their own in this berm, at least at the moment. We had a Mexican plum tree, which I do think still to this day would be a really pretty complement when both, when the plum is in bloom and later on the Flame Acanthus, but this actually got hit by a car. So I've been using it to grow other Mexican plum trees, of which I had minimal success, but success. And so that's these two together there. The Flame Acanthus here is, not really on the low point of this berm. The water actually flows through that channel there, more so into the yard. And so just something to consider there. Elsewhere, I think very interesting is to look at the few Flame Acanthus plants that we have transplanted. So these were really small plantings here. Year one is most certainly when they don't look their best. But these were transplanted pretty late in the spring, honestly. And so, we're playing the patient game here. They still have new growth. You can see it's really thinned out in the original plant. We did cut them back slightly. They were very small anyways, but they are surviving, and I imagine that they will look much better in year 2 than year 1. And then one final transplant here. This one was transplanted last fall. It's now summer. And so it's looking healthier. It's had time to establish, but here underneath this really beautiful rock rose, we have this Flame Acanthus here. I believe we had another plant right beneath that rock rose, but the rock rose moved in quicker and knocked it out. And so this will be a Flame Acanthus that we will prune back because it's in such a small area. And so we'll keep this one pretty compact, really play the game of compact, profuse blooming for this pollinator garden that we have behind our guest house here. All right, y'all, that's a wrap here with the Flame Acanthus or Hummingbird Bush. I have included all the sources and resources that I've used to produce this video and the complimentary post, you know, along with my own experience both observing Flame Acanthus out in Texas's natural spaces or nicely landscaped areas, as well as my own experience working with it here. So be sure to check that post out at ensembletexas.com. And finally, if you're interested in getting started with Texas native plant landscaping but don't know how, consider picking up my completely free cheat sheet on getting started with Texas native plant landscaping at ensembletexas.com/freebies, or you can find a link in the description below. All right, y'all, until next time.